Also, Deryck, where in the world are you? Because it's magical.
I'm just in my studio actually. This is kind of where I live if I'm off the road.
Mhm.
But yeah, all my favorite things in the world right next to me, my guitars.
Fair enough. I did want to know, you've been kind of going nonstop. Has it sunk in yet that you're now on the home stretch of the farewell tour?
I think because now that I'm home for Christmas or like that we're off for Christmas, and we don't start back up until like this tour, all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, like when we start back up, this is the last run. But yeah, I don't think it's really set in until just recently that it's kind of
Hmm.
all coming to an end once we start back up on the road. I mean, I've always known it's the last run, but it kind of feels like it's never ending, and it also feels like it's just what we do. Like I forget every night on stage that this is the last time that we're in these cities until it's the last song. And then you realize, oh wait, because a lot of times I'll be like, all right, we'll see you next year, and I'm like, oh wait, I can't say that anymore.
Hmm.
um, so yeah, it usually doesn't hit me till the very last song.
Has it been emotional?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's moments, I guess. Probably because even though it is the last night in those cities, uh,
Right.
there's so much more tour left. Like it always feels like, well, we still got like 6 more months. I got like 80 more shows to do, so it doesn't feel like it's the end ever.
Fair.
Like we'll be done in a city, and it's like, well, I still got tomorrow, and then the next day, and the next day. So it hasn't ever quite felt like the end. Um, which in a way is really good because I don't want it to feel like the end. I want to do what we do
Hmm.
and just, like not really think about other things like that. I just want to think about doing the best show that we can do in the moment and not the
Fair.
best show because it's the last show.
Hmm. I did hear that when the record was done, you listened to it, and that was kind of when you had I don't know if it's an epiphany, but you had that moment where like, okay, this is it. Let's wrap it
Yeah.
up with a bow. You seem very, I don't know, you seem very kind of chill about it all. Was it a pretty effortless feeling where you're like, no, no, it's like a complete, like we're complete, this is cool, or how did it feel in that moment?
Yes, to a certain degree. It was not an easy decision, but it was an easy it was an easy decision to make once I listened to the record, but to get to that point was a few years of like going back and forth, like how long am I going to do this? And then it's like, burying those thoughts, saying, no, you're in Sum 41, this is what you're going to do forever. Stop having those thoughts of wanting to do something else or like putting this debt. Like, so I buried those thoughts, and it was a couple of years of that. But once I got to the place of feeling that it was okay to make that decision. And really, that was brought on by the music and feeling like, well, what else would I do after this anyway? It felt like the work was complete at this point. So then that point was like, no, 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 now's the time. I've been feeling this way for a while. The music has told me that the work is complete. And that's what I always base my decisions on is the music. I let the music tell me what to do. And I always trust my instincts. And that wasn't always the case in the past. Whenever I've made mistakes, it's because I don't listen to myself and I don't listen to my instincts, and I'll rely on either advice from other people or my own thoughts rather than my own feelings. Where I'll
Mm,
think about something like, no, that doesn't make sense. I should do this because that sounds like it's a better plan. But inside, I'm like, I don't really feel like that's the best thing for me, but my brain is telling me I should. So I don't do that anymore. I just follow what my instincts are.
did you look back at the track listing and you're like, oh, the last song is how the end begins? Like, did
Yeah,
you
I
look back
know.
and
That song was not intended, when that song was written, that was not intended to be a final song for like a final record. That was just a song that I wrote.
Mhm. I wanted to ask about Johnny Libertine too, because that one, I could be wrong, but isn't that from the Underclass Hero sessions from way
It
back?
was actually, yeah, yeah. I mean, it started back then.
Hmm.
And it was mostly completed. I've changed it around since those days. It's a little different. But yeah, that was a song that was supposed to be back then. It just never felt complete back then, so we never put it on the record.
I was also wondering too if it was one of those tracks that you were like, oh, Dave's in the band. Like we were waiting for Dave.
No, not necessarily. It was just yeah, it was just at the time, again, it was like the music didn't speak to, I mean, the music spoke to me back then, and it told me it's just not a finished song. Even though it
I
was
like
finished, it was mixed and mastered and everything, and it was ready to go on the album. But when I listened to it, I'm like, it just feels weird. Something about it.
I like that you go with your gut. That's important. That's important
Well, like
stuff.
I said, I've made a lot of mistakes in the past by not listening to my gut, so I haven't always been great at it.
It has me curious about the archives, though. Of course, that track would have brought you back many years. When you're in a creative process, what is that, the Sum 41 archives look like? Do you often go back for inspiration?
You mean like songs that didn't make it,
Yeah.
or like there's not a lot of stuff there. I do go back and like there's usually riffs or a verse or like a part of a song. So, for instance, there's a couple things from this record that were a little old that were just started as little pieces. Like there's a song near the end, right before, I think it's the song right before How the End Begins, where I think it's called It's All Me. That was something that was for the Chuck album back in 2003 when I was writing that, that never got finished. Um, there's a song called House of Liars that was almost finished for Scream Bloody Murder back in 2009 that I never quite finished. Um, there's still a song that I wrote around All Killer Does Look Effect. It's like 2002, and it's this great riff that I've never been able to turn into a song. And I thought it was going to be a song on the Does Look Affected record, and it just never turned into a song. And I still can't finish it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think you don't strike me now? I thought maybe you would be a little bit of a nostalgic person, but it seems as though you are very forward thinking.
Yeah. Very
Mhm.
present in like close future, not too distant. I mean, there's like always an eye on the future, but like I'm not really trying to game out the future too much. Um, but yeah, more present and close future. And I think of the past fondly, but I don't spend much time in memory lane.
Fair. When it comes to, I just want to touch on the archive for 1 second. Now,
Sure.
I'm sure you're getting reunion tour offers already, but when it comes to perhaps releasing music after the fact, do you think you'll dive back in and maybe finish some of that stuff or get some stuff from the past out?
I have no plans for that. I can't
Okay.
say that that would never happen,
Mhm.
but I don't really think about that, and it's not something I've ever thought about. I always just think like you never know. I mean, as of right now, I have no plans to do anything like that, and I none of that interests me right now. But in years to come, and there's like some re-release of like Does Look Affected, and I finally finish that song and throw it on there as an anniversary. Sure, maybe you never know.
All right. Can we talk about some firsts from this final tour, this farewell?
Yeah.
How was playing Red Rocks?
Oh, it was great. Well, so it was our not our first time playing it, but it was our first time headlining it.
Right.
So we played it two other times, once with Motley Crue, and then we co-headlined it with Rise Against back in 2007, I think. Um, but this was our first time. We're just us, and it was great. It was one of those shows that like even though it was Red Rocks and it looks beautiful and it was sold out, the crowd felt really special. Like it was one of those special shows because sometimes you can play a big show sold out and it's kind of boring, and the crowd doesn't really seem to sing along, or they just don't. It's just a weird night. You never know. This crowd, for whatever reason, was just a special crowd, and the whole night was magical.
When you talk about big crowds, of course, the show in Paris, 42,000 people. That one seemed pretty special from watching afar online, but or like clips online. But also,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
brought out Steve Jones' Les Paul.
Yes. Yeah, I was lucky enough to I know somebody, I know the guy who owns it, who purchased that guitar a little while ago, and he offered it to me to play. So I just said, well, you know what would be great is in Paris at the the stadium. It's a sold out stadium. What better place to pull that out? It was the last show in Europe, so it was great. The thing about that guitar, not only is it a guitar that changed my life, and I speak about that record, Nevermind the Bollocks and Sex Pistols, in my book, that really, that band and that just everything about it is the whole reason I'm here now, playing the music I do, writing the music the way I do, and even the way I look, my hair in high school was everything was based off Johnny Rotten. My son's name is Lydon, um, because of John Lydon. So I mean, there's probably no band that has had a bigger impact on me. So to play that guitar was special enough. But then, as a guitar nerd who just likes guitars, as you can see them all here, it was just such an incredible playing and sounding guitar on its own. If it had nothing to do with Steve Jones, it was just a great guitar.
Mhm. What was the guitar you chose to have on the cover of your book with you? What's the importance of
That
that one?
guitar is actually sitting over here. That's just that's a Gibson Les Paul. It's just a guitar. I used it on the record. It's just my own guitar, something I picked up years ago. It's a great sounding playing guitar as well.
All right. I didn't know if there's any major significance considering that that's kind of memento, like a
That photo was a random photo that was never taken for anything.
oh.
That wasn't supposed to be for anything. That was a picture my wife took of me in the hallway. She wanted to test out the lighting in that hallway because she had to do some photos for herself or something. And she said, "Hey, can you take a photo here?" And I go, "Well, let me grab a guitar, so I'm doing something." And that was that. It was just a test photo, and it sat around for a year, and then it just happened to be a good photo for something.
Do you still have the first guitar you ever had?
The first guitar
First one?
I ever owned, yes, I do own it. It was it was like a really bad acoustic guitar that's sitting in my mom's house still. The first guitar I ever bought and like really learned how to play guitar on, my electric guitar, was unfortunately stolen. Um, so I don't have that one, unfortunately. But I do have the very, very first guitar that I ever like learned how to play. My first guitar I had for about a year, which is, like I said, a bad acoustic guitar. It's really hard to play. It's because it's such a bad guitar.
Fair. I wanted to ask you about the set list. What's as far as these are big shows, these big final shows, huge production, tons of people. Are you feeding off the energy of the crowd? Are you able to switch things up as far as the
Oh yeah, I
sets?
mean, we always feed off the crowd's energy. We always try to play as many songs as we can that we think people are gonna know. Um, I think the hardest thing about this set list and this tour is the fact that we have a brand new record. At the same time, we're trying to do a farewell record. So normally we'd play a few more new songs. And if we've had any complaints, which is a strange complaint to get from a band that's been around as long as we have, is that we don't play enough new songs. And I've heard that wherever we go, and I hear it online. It's just like, why don't you play any like more new songs? It's like, well, because we're playing like 30 something songs, and it's like over 2 hour show. So, and they're big shows. Like you want to play as many songs as you can that people are gonna know. So we play a little bit of everything from every record, and we kind of span the whole career without going too deep into the weeds where you're gonna like lose people's interest.
I don't know if anyone's going to lose their interest on the farewell tour. You've got, I think everyone's very present. That's probably actually a really great thing, when you're on stage as well. Do you think the vibe has completely changed as far as audience? Is
I
the
think
energy?
so. I think so because like, there's certain places that you can play longer and certain places that normally you want to that are used to a shorter show. Like North America, so the US and Canada included, is somewhat they're like a hits crowd and you don't want to play too long because you can start to lose the focus. Whereas I've noticed on this farewell run, it doesn't seem to matter where we go. People are just in it the whole night,
Yeah.
which has been cool.
I want to talk
Europe
about.
is famously, like, you could play for 3 hours in Europe and they love every song.
That's got to feel good.
It is great. It's great playing in Europe. They
Um,
never get bored.
I think we have a lot to learn. I mean, I don't think here in Toronto anyone's going to be tapping out after a couple hours on the two final shows. By the way,
Yeah. We won't play 3 hours, but it's we definitely, like I said, we try to hit something from every record.
I love that. I feel you just are so chill. You seem very, ready for holidays, the final shows. When it comes to these final shows, like is there pressure to get some special guests out there? The set list, have you hammered it down? Are you just going to kind of keep on rolling?
I think, we change up the set list to a certain degree. Like I said, we change it more for territories. Like, so Europe
Mhm.
has a different set than we did in the US, and Asia had a bit of a different set. Like 90% of the songs are the same, but we'll kind of move some stuff around. And then there's like that 10% where, like, for instance, like there's been certain songs that were only released in Europe. There are certain songs that were only released in Canada. So we'll place that. Like, there's just some things that we can do some maneuvering around. So it'll be a little different in Canada than it's been everywhere else. And like I said, every country's kind of had its own set list to a certain degree. Now, as far as guests go, we haven't gotten that far yet. I know there's been talk, obviously, about Toronto, and if we have any friends that may come up, we haven't really gotten there yet. We're definitely not too far in advance of a band that like let's plan out the Toronto show yet. 6 weeks away. We'll do that maybe 6 days away. But
Okay.
yeah, I don't know. You never know.
I like
I
how
mean,
it's
we have
like
two
last show
shows in
ever.
Toronto, right? We have the 28th and the 30th.
Hmm.
So there is room to do different things at those shows. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll have some guests in Toronto. We'll see.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Congrats again as well. You are going to be in the Canadian Music Hall of Fame
I know
as well.
that's really crazy. That was a huge shock, surprise, and we were so excited about that. We found out about that 5 minutes before we went on stage in LA. A couple, I don't know, however many weeks ago that was. And I remember like the show in LA, it's kind of like being in Toronto in a way. There's so many friends and guests and people we work with. Like the guest list is just out of control in LA. So you're kind of being pulled in every direction. And it was like one of those really stressful times leading up to a show where it's like, I can't believe we're on in 5 minutes. And it's like, I haven't even had time to get ready or focus on the show yet. And it was just another one of those things where our management said, hey, we need to talk to you guys in the backstage, just you guys alone. We're like, we're going on stage in 5 minutes. And they're like, trust me, you'll like it. And they told us the news, and it just made every problem or stress just disappear. Like we were so excited that nothing mattered anymore. We're like, we just went on stage with the biggest smiles. Like it was like nothing mattered except for that all of a sudden.
Well, your hard work has definitely paid off, and congrats also too for taking charge of the full time of the band. I think that's a really special thing. Not every band gets the opportunity to do, and you're doing it well with this massive farewell to the fans. We're all appreciative of it for sure.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. It's been great. I mean, the crowd's been amazing. The fans have been super emotional in a really positive way. It's been so fun to be on stage every night. Like there's no bad shows. Everything has been great.
Do you talk about what you have planned personally for after? I feel like you've done so much, like with the memoir out, the double album, the tour. Do you think about again the near time after, or just going to finally take a break?
I don't do well with breaks. Like I don't do
Hmm.
well with doing nothing. I think being home will be nice, but I think it'll be a lot of figuring out what to do next. I think there'll be a lot of work. I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. I mean, there's so many things, there's so many ideas that people pitch me all the time. Like, hey, would you be interested in doing this with me? Would you like to do that? Or like, what do you think about we start this thing? And there's all these like ideas kicking around. So I think the first thing I would do is like come home and like say hello to my family and then start like taking meetings and talking to people and seeing what's out there and all that kind of stuff. And the most important thing is like being able to sleep in my bed every night.
Absolutely. Well, obviously you have
So
endless
that's where I'm at.
creativity. Oh, yeah. And you mean obviously you're incredibly talented and so creative, and I'm sure opportunities will never cease. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun projects we'll be talking about after the fact. But first, we look forward to your shows in Toronto.
Cool. Yeah, me too. We're really excited.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for taking the time, and we'll see you at the end of January.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks.